Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic, totally self-inflicted collapses in the history of modern sports. Seriously, if you're a fan of the beautiful game, this story is gonna feel like a tragic sports documentary. We're talking about the absolute mind-boggling implosion of Italian football. This was an empire that literally ruled the world, only to completely shatter under the weight of its own arrogance and complacency. So, let's just jump right into it.
60. Let that number sink in for a second. For an incredible 60 years, the Italian national team had never, ever missed a World Cup. But all of that changed on a cold, absolutely heartbreaking night in November 2017 when Sweden officially knocked them out. It was a massive shock to the global system, right? And I think it was symbolized perfectly by the legendary goalkeeper Gianluigi Buffon just openly sobbing on live television. I mean, it really signaled the bitter end of an era.
And really, that leads us to the fundamental question of this whole explainer. How on earth did this happen? How did a cultural empire that once housed the absolute gods of the game plunge into this dark era of crumbling stadiums and complete systemic failure? Like, how do you go from being the undisputed king of the hill to watching the biggest tournament in the world from your couch?
Let's map this out real quick. 1. The fall of an empire. 2. Crumbling stadiums and missing millions. 3. Fossilized tactics and forgotten youth. 4. National team tragedies. And 5. The path to resurrection.
Okay, Section 1, the fall of an empire, from the glory of the Seven Sisters to the shadows of Calciopoli. We really have to start by heading back to the glitz and glamour of the 1980s and 90s.
Because during this golden era, you have to remember, Serie A wasn't just a league. It was basically a religious experience. This was the legendary Seven Sisters era. It was the absolute, undisputed capital of the global game, the only destination that mattered if you were one of the world's greatest gladiators. We're talking Maradona, Van Basten, Ronaldo, Zidane, all clashing under the blinding lights of packed, iconic stadiums. To win in Italy back then was to achieve true footballing immortality. And it all seemingly culminated in that triumphant 2006 World Cup victory. But tragically, you know what? That 2006 peak was actually the breaking point. It was the top of the roller coaster right before the absolute plunge, and they left a massive pile of rubble behind them.
Because if we contrast that 90s reality with today, the mutation is just tragic. Italy went from being the ultimate dream destination for global superstars into what is essentially a developmental feeding league. It's a place where young talent gets polished up just to be sold off to the English Premier League for a massive profit. Giant, historic clubs like AC Milan and Inter Milan, teams that used to absolutely terrorize and dominate the Champions League, they essentially became background characters in Europe for years.
So, you're probably wondering, when did it actually start going wrong? Well, the rot really set in at the very height of their arrogance. They genuinely believed they were the untouchable kings of the world, and because of that, they completely failed to adapt to the new rules of modern industrial football. The 2006 Calciopoli match-fixing scandal completely shattered the league's credibility and its brand value overnight. Even Juventus, who were completely dominant domestically, found themselves totally isolated and drowning in financial manipulation scandals. But listen, Calciopoli was just the loud, explosive headline. An even deadlier, silent killer was brewing off the pitch.
Which brings us to Section 2, crumbling stadiums and missing millions. We're going to look at the terrifying financial and infrastructural disease that choked the league.
The divergence in strategy across Europe is honestly staggering. While the English Premier League was looking ahead, modernizing into this massive global marketing monster and capturing audiences in the digital space, Asia, and the Americas, and while Spain and Germany were busy mastering an elite youth development revolution, Italian executives were completely frozen in time. They were trapped in this arrogant old boys club of aging bureaucrats who genuinely thought they could still run football like it was 1990.
I mean, just look at their infrastructure. Most of their stadiums haven't had a single nail hammered into them since the 1990 World Cup. They're trapped by local municipal bureaucracy. Politicians actually weaponize historical and environmental protection laws just to block new construction, meaning the clubs simply cannot own their own stadiums. So these massive, historic arenas like the San Siro or the Stadio Olimpico, which should be absolute cash cows, have turned into these rotting concrete monuments. They are literally financial burdens generating zero modern matchday revenue. And on top of that, outdated stadium issues like hooliganism and racism completely damaged the league's image globally, which naturally drove families away from the stands.
And all of this built into a complete financial disaster. There is now a massive canyon-sized chasm in TV rights and revenue. While the Premier League secures these global broadcast deals worth billions and billions, Serie A's international value just plummeted. As that matchday and broadcast money evaporated, Italian clubs simply couldn't afford to compete with the billionaire and state-backed wealth exploding across England, France, and Spain. Financially speaking, they became dwarfs.
All right, Section 3, Fossilized Tactics and Forgotten Youth. Let's shift our focus to the pitch itself and explore how this institutional arrogance completely destroyed on-field creativity and youth development. In a pretty perfect example of this cultural fossilization, Italian managers developed this really stubborn, almost weird obsession with age. They continually trusted exhausted, totally burnt-out 34-year-old veterans to save the day, while brilliant 18-year-old prospects from the Primavera, their youth academies, were just left to rot on the benches in the lower divisions. They completely missed the boat on trusting the next generation.
And the actual football they were playing, it became incredibly tactically stagnant. While the rest of Europe fully embraced modern sports science, data analytics, high-intensity pressing, and blazing athletic speed, Italian football doubled down on a slow, archaic, risk-averse system. They focused entirely on producing robotic defenders, literally choking the creative freedom right out of their most talented players. And the result? A complete starvation of world-class talent. Just think about it for a second. Since the days of Christian Vieri, Pippo Inzaghi, and Francesco Totti, Italy has essentially failed to produce a truly elite, world-class number 9. And to make matters even worse, instead of fixing that youth system, club presidents opted for cheap, short-term bandages. They actively exploited tax laws, specifically the Decreto Crescita, or growth decree. This loophole allowed them to bring in very mediocre foreign talent on the cheap just to save on taxes, rather than investing that money into domestic youth academies. So they effectively intentionally blocked the path for their own Italian kids. Which takes us to Section 4. National team tragedies. Because ultimately, the bill for a decade of mismanagement came due, and the national team paid the most horrific price. It has been a wildly tragic roller coaster. From that absolute peak in 2006 down to 2017, when a tactically clueless Gianpiero Ventura literally sat frozen on the bench as Italy lost to Sweden and missed the World Cup. And then, just when you thought it couldn't possibly get any worse, the unthinkable happened again in 2022. A devastating, humiliating loss at home to North Macedonia, forcing Italy to watch a second consecutive World Cup from their living rooms. Just brutal. Now you might be looking at that timeline and thinking, wait, what about Roberto Mancini winning Euro 2020? Well, as this perfectly captures, that brief, miraculous euphoria was really just a beautiful mirage. It was a temporary painkiller, a final gasp of collective pride that masked a terminal illness within the system. It briefly hid the absolute cancer in their developmental pipeline, but as we saw, reality caught up with them incredibly fast. So, how does this fallen empire rise from the ashes? That brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, the path to resurrection. Fixing this requires nothing short of an aggressive, top-to-bottom structural and cultural revolution. Step 1 is an uncompromising demolition of the bureaucratic red tape. Politicians absolutely must stop weaponizing historical laws. Clubs need the freedom to build and own modern, multi-purpose stadiums to actually generate daily revenue. Next, they have to ruthlessly purge those fossilized mindsets from the federations and executive boards. They desperately need progressive, forward-thinking business minds who actually understand global digital marketing, modern sports science, nutrition, and how to capture the massive Asian and American markets.
But honestly, perhaps most importantly, they must completely overhaul youth coaching. They have to stop forcing 10-year-old kids to memorize rigid tactical positions. It's crazy. The focus has to aggressively shift back to technical brilliance, blazing speed, and fostering absolute creative freedom, instead of just churning out more robotic defenders. These youth academies need to be viewed not as a mandatory afterthought, but as the actual primary source of a club's wealth in the future. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. Will Italian football finally let go of its golden past, abandon that heavy nostalgia of the 90s, and do the hard, ruthless work of modernizing? Or will the beautiful game remain permanently locked in the crumbling concrete ruins of an empire that just refuses to wake up? It's a massive cultural horror, and the
That's cool. Already.
Thank you so much for joining me